to this week's World Climate Change News Report. Greta Thunberg was named with the title meant to honor the person who most influenced the news and the world, thanks to her work mainstreaming the topic of climate change and sustainability. Other than inspiring the movement Fridays for Future and addressing the United Nations with a moving speech at the Climate Action Summit this year, she has become a symbol for young people across the world demanding urgent climate change action. For the first time in history, the magazine named a teenager, making the 16-year-old climate change activist the youngest person to ever be named. According to a study by Oxfam, around 20 million people had to leave their homes over the last decade due to frequent occurrence of extreme weather events like floods, wildfires, storms, and so on. The numbers of such natural disasters increased from 200 to 1,500 during that time. Nobody is immune to such calamities, but the poor countries seem to be more vulnerable to tackle these all compared to the wealthy ones. Severe drought or excessive flood, every disaster makes the livelihoods of such low to middle income nations worse. Nature's pollinators like bees, insects, bats, and birds are the highest contributors in the agricultural sector. By carrying pollen from plant to plant, they help grow 35% of global food. However, rising level of monocropping and intensive agriculture, extended use of pesticides, are threatening the extinction of 40% of such insect species. Their extinction will stop the production of many vitamin-rich crops like fruits, nuts, and vegetables, which will affect the biodiversity and eventually the planet. The bushfires raging through New South Wales have shrouded Australia's largest city in a blanket of smoke that pushed the air quality index 12 times worse than the hazardous threshold. Still winds on Thursday left a stagnant haze over the city so smoky it set off fire alarms in buildings and train stations. The hazardous air quality is particularly frightful for the city's poorest residents, who are often unable to afford air quality conditioners, air filters, or even masks. Human activity is smothering the ocean, the largest study of its kind has found, and it poses a major threat to marine life. The International Union for Conservation of Nature report combined the work of 67 scientists from 17 countries to conclude that oxygen levels in the ocean had declined around 2% since the mid-20th century, and the volume of waters entirely deprived of oxygen had increased fourfold since the 1960s. The report was released Saturday at the COP25 UN Climate Change Conference in Madrid, in hopes of persuading world leaders to protect the oceans from future oxygen loss. The climate crisis is hurting the New England fishing industry, claims a new report published Monday. With a decline of 16% in fishing jobs in the northeastern U.S. region from 1996 to 2017, and more instability ahead. Arimas found that the fishing industry is in trouble due to variations in ocean temperature. Of particular concern is the Gulf of Maine, an area of the ocean warming faster than nearly any other in the world. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences has found that the world's last remaining tropical glaciers are set to melt completely in the next 10 years due to climate change. Through the glaciers existing high in the mountain ranges between the Andes and the Himalayas have been melting for years, the melt has increased rapidly subsequent to strong 2015-2016 El Nino. A drilling expedition has unearthed that the glacier was melting at a rate of 1 meter per year between 2010 and 2015. However, in 2016, an additional 4.26 meters were recorded. The U.S. has banned any mention of climate change in the ongoing U.S.-UK trade talks, as it was labeled too politically sensitive. The USTR are bound by Congress not to mention greenhouse gas emission reductions in trade agreements, and stated that this ban would not be lifted anytime soon. Climate change and trade are closely related, as they can increase both trade in fossil fuels themselves, as well as fossil fuel-intensive sectors. Global shipping also contributes significantly, as marine fuel oil is one of the dirtiest fossil fuels. The U.S. has consistently insisted on only voluntary, industry-led trade rules. India's capital, New Delhi, was shrouded in a toxic haze for the second day straight on Thursday, as visibility dropped due to cooler temperatures and lower wind speeds that let Delhi pollutants hang in the air. The air quality index crossed 400 on a scale of 500, indicative of severe conditions that pose a risk for healthy people and can seriously impact those with existing conditions. The index measures the concentration of the deadly pollutant PM2.5, tiny particles that can enter the bloodstream. Chronic exposure to such pollutants can contribute to the risk of developing diseases such as lung cancer, according to the World Health Organization. A study by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature has stated that ocean deoxygenation is one of the most disastrous yet underreported side effects of human-induced climate change. Ocean deoxygenation creates dead zones that are dangerously devoid of oxygen and pose extinction risks for active marine creatures. There has been a 2% overall drop in the level of oxygen in the oceans, and the number of dead zones has shot up from 45 sites in the 1960s to 700 areas currently. Unfortunately, as oceans heat up, their capacity to absorb emissions reduces.